I'm Tony Ruiz of Gold Derby here with Fred Toye, the director of 4 episodes of Shogun and Emmy nominated this year for drama series directing. And Fred, you've been nominated before as a producer of
Yes,
Westworld, but
I will.
this is your first directing
Yes, it is,
nomination.
and I
And
couldn't be more
so
excited.
I'm wondering if that feels different.
It feels 100% different. I'm so excited about it. I can't even tell you, that I've been directing about 20 years, and before that I was an editor and I worked as a crew person and have been involved in the industry for a long time. And honestly, the excitement level that I have about it is far greater than I thought it would be. And the best part of all has been that all of these wonderful friends and associates and comrades over the years who I've worked with reached out to me. So it felt like a big birthday party, when the announcement came, because I got to talk to all these people that I hadn't talked to in a long time, and the phone rang. And so like the best part is being able to connect with old friends and to talk to people that I haven't talked to in a really long time. So it's a total thrill because it's fun. It feels like a birthday party to me. So I'm enjoying it on that respect.
Well, so you have done you've been, as you said, you've been directing for such a long time, and so coming to something as big in scope as Shogun, we'll get to the individual episode in a minute, but just in terms of the scope of this, when you see that challenge, are you excited by it? Are you scared by it? How do you feel when you were approached to do
That's a good
this?
question. I relish it. I love it because to me, my influences and the sort of the heroes for me in terms of filmmakers that I revere were all kind of the era of the epic filmmaking from the late 50s through the 70s. And so, to be able to take the inner sort of David, whatever part of me that has a David lean in it, or Akira Kurosawa, and sort of bring it forward, that was a real exciting challenge for me. And I was really, really super excited about it. And I think that the way that I approached it was, scale is really, big, and scale really is an interpretable sort of concept. It doesn't mean a big wide shot. That's not necessarily scale. Scale is like scale of story as well, like reach of story, the reach of the story. And I discovered that in these wonderful scripts, Justin and Rachel and the team put together, that embedded within it was a massive story that I could use my skill set to be able to put onto a big palette. So it was an awesome challenge and something I loved.
Well, would it be fair to say that one of the challenges is the fact that there is this large scale, but on so many levels, it is such an intimate narrative?
Yes, absolutely. That's my favorite part. You know what I mean? To me, it's like the David Lean or the Kurosawa or whatever reference you want to use. It's all about the intimacy and discovering the internal stories of the characters. And that's about sort of like the contrast of both, that sort of like telling the bigger world and showing the bigger world through the lens of the intimate and the internal stories of the characters is what brings you into it. I think if it's just big, it doesn't mean anything. And sort of what was embedded in the scripts and the stories were these incredible, complex characters that were gave the opportunity to discover through a visual language what they were experiencing. It wasn't always the words. It wasn't always exactly the moment for the moment. As you see Mariko's journey through the story. It's not necessarily what she's saying, it's what she's doing. And that allows a filmmaker with a visual palette to be able to tell us a story of incredible complexity because you're playing multiple levels. So that part of it was incredible and a great opportunity.
So let's talk about the actual episode Crimson Sky, which is not just you're nominated for. It's nominated for writing. Some of the actors are submitting it for their Emmy submissions. This was clearly a high point of all of television and not just this series. So what was kind of your first impressions when you first read that particular script?
Well, what's funny is you asked the question earlier, like, was I intimidated? But like, I think that script in particular was of the four that I did. That was the one where I was like, okay, there's a lot that needs to go into this script. And so I need to, you only have just so much time. It's not going to be a 2 hour episode, right? It's going to be an hour. And I was looking at that script saying like, okay, I need to temper my expectations of what we can achieve both story-wise and visually and character-wise within this story, because it could get big and massive and you could get lost in it. So to me, in reading that script, there was a lot that was going into it. I was like, okay, great. There's a lot to handle here. There's a lot to organize. But I felt the way through was really through, as we were speaking about a second ago, through character. Just the intimacy of Mariko's journey needed to be the guiding point of the story. And so to me, that was always the telltale, was to where's this coming back to in terms of of Mariko's journey, because um Hero is not in that episode. Tornaga is puppeteering it, and you don't know exactly what the puppeteering is because you're not sure what Crimson Sky really is. But as you watch it play out in this story, you realize it's all about this character and this journey. And she had to play something incredibly nuanced and complex, which is this this plan that really is wholly inside of her head and her head alone in the story. And yet she can't emote it, she can't tell anybody the plan, she can't, it has to just be this focused journey that takes her right straight to where she ends up, which is not great but inevitable, and ultimately turning the tide for the history of Japan. I mean, it's such an impactful, when you get to the 10th episode, and then also if you read the history and if you've read the novel, you realize the incredible impact that this sacrifice that she made, that was ultimately inevitable for her character, if you know her history, what it did for the history of Japan. It's an incredible story. And I was so fortunate to be able to do that episode because it really encapsulated all of the drama that had reached to this crescendo happened in episode 9.
Well, and in doing that, when I spoke to Anna Sawai about this episode, um, this episode asks so much of her, and so much of her character has to be internal. And so, particularly like in the scene where she faces off kind of with Ishido, it's very much just a tight close up on her face, and she's having this long monologue. What was kind of your direction to her in that particular scene?
So well, first of all, she, like any incredible and fine actor, she came completely prepared. So she had in her head all everything necessary in order to execute that scene at that level. So I don't want to take credit for that performance because believe me, it was an incredibly powerful performance. She was 100% there. And I think that what I needed to provide for her that was very helpful was the context by which we enter this scene and what's happened before, what's happened after, and where all the other characters are. Because effectively, the subtlety by which the interchanges happen with Ishido and with Ochiba play everything into the way she plays that scene. Because if you remember, the introduction is to get reintroduced in front of this audience to Ochiba and the mother of the air and their intimate relationship. That informs the way that performance develops. So I think direction for her was really just to say, like, let's play this in chapters, and and allow her to enjoy the moments that she can enjoy. She was nervous obviously doing a big scene like that, you know but like I think that my job as a director is to provide the tools by which an actor can do their best work. So to me, in with someone who's that prepared, who understood completely on a fundamental level what the directive was in the scene, it was my job to provide her the groundwork in order for her to develop the scene. And a lot of times it's really about pacing and timing to allow those moments to develop, because I'll notice as a director, oh, she's doing something really interesting in that moment. In that last take I saw her, wow, that's something, there's something there. And I would encourage her to say, I believe this is what you were playing. Let's play more with that. Let's allow that to develop a little bit. And so that, I think my contribution was really supportive for Anna. And she came in swinging, which is exactly what she should have done. That
Well,
makes
and you contrast that with, speaking of swinging, with the great, scene kind of in that courtyard where she just kind of lets loose,
yeah.
which has so many levels to it. It's more than just, oh, here's a cool, action sequence.
Yes.
And Anna told me that there was a lot of preparation for that
There was.
particular
There was a
sequence.
tremendous amount of preparation, and I think the just, the way those things generally work is you prepare, they're written in the script, you're prepared for them from a story level, but then you get involved in the stunt work. And Lash, our stunt coordinator, Lauro, he understood. We had a lot of tone conversations about like what's the intent of that scene, what's going to happen in that scene. So the rehearsal process really is logistical. How are we getting into this space? How are we getting into that space? What's going to happen in this moment? What's this little exchange? What's this big fight? How does that look? How am I shooting it? My intention would be to tell the actor this. We had designed a shot where when when the two groups go into the heavy battle sequence, that it really be about her and put her in the center of it, and that I would push the camera and I was like, save this moment for when the camera comes in on you. So it's that kind of designing. But in terms of performance, it's effectively the same kind of thing that we're talking about in the ceremonial house. Like there's such a level, an incredibly advanced level of preparation that Anna had done in order to prepare for that scene. And we talked about it well in advance, because I think that for her to prepare something like that, and the levels in which she has to play it, both with the fighting aspect, but also with this moment of exhaustion that she gets at, where she has to say, I can no longer do this. That's a really hard place for an actor to get, because you don't want to play weakness, right? It's not a weakness, it's a choice. And in that choice, she's showing to Lord Kiyama, she's showing to the group there that with this impenetrable force that's put up against her, she has no other choice other than to stop. And it's not out of weakness. So for her to understand how I was going to film it, in what order, you want to know what day you're going to do that piece, right? It's like we're shooting this over 4 days. You don't want to say, oh yeah, we're going to shoot your part, the part where you fight and you fall down on the first morning at 9 a.m., right? She has to be prepared. So to me, the planning that she's talking about was really both rehearsing for the stunt work, and but also preparing her own process for what part in the scene she's filming on what day. So it was an incredible preparation period.
I also feel like so much of this episode, there are so many little moments that also come down to the editing. And, particularly like the moment where she's about to kill herself before Ishido stops her. It's such a tense moment.
Yeah.
What was the working relationship like with the editing?
Well, Thomas was on the first round of it, and I ended up working with him and with Maria and with Ika on that episode. So it was sort of all hands on deck on that episode, because there was a lot of stuff that had to be kind of dialed in. But as I mentioned earlier, I'm an editor. I used to be an editor, and and so I'm very attuned to the editing process. It's a really important component for me. So when I shoot, I shoot a lot for editorial. When I say that, it means um, I believe that big swings as a director, when like for example in episode 5, post earthquake, there's a really big long shot of Blackthorn going through the village of Ajiro and finding Fuji injured and all that stuff. That was a scene that took an entire day to shoot. It was a big swing as a director. There weren't a lot of other options. That's rare for me. Generally speaking, I'm sort of very editorially conscious, so I provide options for the editors to go like, "Hey, I'm going to go for this really cool thing that's all going to happen in this one shot, and it's going to end up in this big close-up, and it's going to be this awesome performance. However, I'm going to shoot this other little piece just in case it doesn't quite work." So that sequence needed to be and could be editorial, in the sense that you want it to be in Anna's head, but you also wanted to have all of the elements of the people in the room. You wanted to feel Blackthorn watching her. Blackthorn has to make that choice to be able to second her. Like all of that had to be editorial. And so to me, we started, rightfully so, kind of fat with that and just let it play out. And then it was just really like, how far can we bend this thing? How much tension can we create? before Ishido comes in. Justin had this amazing idea to like as many inserts as you can get. And I remember when we finished the scene work, he stayed behind and shot a whole bunch of inserts, and it was like we knew that we could always just build the tension with the knife and the tying of the and so all of that was pre-planned, and it was probably the sequence. I don't know. I don't want to say for sure, but I would say that scene was probably the sequence we spent the most amount of time on because of how far do you take it? How much tension can you create for people? And it was fun. It was a fun experience because like it was an embarrassment of riches because it was an incredible performance on everybody in the room, but especially on to be able to play that moment of of getting to the point. There's something that happens psychologically in that experience, which is displayed both in Mariko and in Blackthorn when Blackthorn does it in the finale, where there's a transition that happens in when you've gotten to the point in which you're willing to commit seppuku. There's something that changes psychologically in you, and that's what happens when she collapses and at the exhaustion moment, and then Cosmo reaches his hand out and lets her stand. That it's an incredibly powerful moment, and again, like all rooted in the performance, not the filmmaking. I mean, we made it look as good as we can make it look, but it was the performance.
So, we have to obviously talk about the last scene,
Yeah.
because I've gone on YouTube and there's so many like reaction videos of people watching it in real time. And I don't know if you've ever watched any of those. They are
No, I want to.
they're just you can see the investment in that people have, especially when she goes to stand against the door. People all of a
Don't go
sudden you
there.
see their
Don't go
faces
there.
change. Yeah, they know exactly what's about to happen. So talk about staging and creating that final sequence.
So there was another version of it, honestly, that we had done. That's pieces of it are in there right now. Where when I was talking earlier about taking a swing on something, but providing options, right? So I took a swing on something. That's a piece of it is in there. That was what I had thought might work. First of all, you have everybody in the room, you have the tension of it and all that stuff. And by the way, one of the other directors, Takeshi, had helped me out with a day of filming on that sequence because it took a lot to build that. So like I directed most of it. Takeshi helped me. It was kind of a group effort, much like the editing was. So I want to credit him for his great work to help out there. But I felt as though if you stopped time in this moment, like you'd led up to this moment, that you would, if you stopped time in the moment of her choice before the explosion happened, that you would that it would be that another moment of tension, just like the seppuku moment, right? So we got this camera that does like super slow-mo. It's called the Phantom camera, and we set it up. And so we have stuff where like literally like you just see like the blink of the eye is like literally like this, right before the explosion happened. And ultimately, it didn't have the same impact. Stopping time didn't have the same impact than the shock. That the shock moment was the bigger. It was Justin's correct uh, 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 assessment that the shock was going to have a greater impact to the audience and to the storytelling than stopping time. But the funny story about the stopping time moment was Anna knew that we were going to shoot this shot. It was really complicated to set up and everything to do this like super bullet time shot of her face when she's just about to die. But it happened to also be her birthday on that day. And so on the first take of it, it was like we had to rehearse this camera move that had to be really fast or whatever. And so it was like ready and happy birthday. And then we came out and brought her a cake, like on her first take when we were actually rolling. Like, and it was the meanest thing you could ever do to somebody. It was like to present them with a happy birthday cake, like on their actual like bullet time moment of death, in the show. So I was complicit. I'm sorry to say, but it was a very funny moment. But a piece of it's in there. If you kind of break apart that, you can see a little bit of that slow mo shot in there. But to stage it was really it was really again, like, to just focus in on her character, to just, and you're kind of with Blackthorn, because Blackthorn is like trying to come up with a plan, try to get out of the room, try to figure out what to do, but her stillness and her quietness and her resolve was the anchor point of the scene, and ultimately why that scene works so well.
Yeah, it did, and it got you an Emmy nomination.
Yeah.
So, so Fred, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
I really hope you come back for season two. Everybody go to goldderby.com, make your predictions for the upcoming award season, and stay tuned for interviews with more Emmy nominees in the coming weeks. Fred Toye, a real great pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Great to chat with you. Thank you.